It is November 4th, 2021. We're here at the Pyle Center with the Honorable Gary Richardson. Thank you for talking with us today. I'm Michelle Hirsch, and we will start with the easy questions. When and where were you born?
September 30th, 1947 in Tucson,
Oh, okay.
where my dad was going to school at the U of A. And I like to tell people, because we're big ASU fans, that it only took me 8 months to convince our family to move away. So we went to Oregon State in Corvallis, where my dad got his PhD degree. And then we moved to West Lafayette, Indiana, where my dad taught at Purdue for 2 years.
Oh.
Then he got his job coming back to Arizona, which is what he wanted. And he got a job teaching at ASU.
Oh, wow.
So we instantly became fans.
Yeah. And what year was that you came back to ASU?
1953.
53, okay. And so that was for your dad's job.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about your mom and siblings?
Sure. I have one brother and 4 sisters. I'm the 3rd child and the oldest boy. And my parents ended up with 2 twin sisters as the 5th and 6th children. They were born in Mesa when we lived here in Tempe.
Yeah, that's and was your mom a stay-at-home mom?
She was.
Mm-hmm.
And we would go to school with our dad because my school, which is the Pain Training Laboratory School,
Mm-hmm.
was on campus right close to my dad's office. So we could walk to school with our dad and sometimes even walk home with him.
Can you share what street you lived on or what the cross
Sure.
streets were?
We lived on Vista del Cerro, which is a curving street, which is just between Tempe High School and Daly Park, just north of Broadway. We lived there for the full 18 years until I got married.
And so what year did you get married?
1970.
And your wife is Lucy?
Lucy.
Mm-hmm.
We've been married for 51 years.
Oh, congratulations.
We have 6 kids and 20 grandchildren.
Oh, wow, what a blessing.
So that's what I consider our greatest accomplishment in life is our kids.
And what are your kids doing? Do they live nearby? Or do they live in other places?
4 of our kids live here in the valley. 1 lives in Utah and 1 lives in Thatcher.
And so some of your grandchildren are nearby. You get to see them more
Right.
often. How fun.
And we do a lot of driving to their shows, their sports events and different things. So we spend the time and the gas to get to them.
And growing up, let's talk about ways that your family spent leisure time. What kinds of things did you do as a family growing up?
Well, working at ASU, my dad got the same days off from work as us kids. So we did a lot of camping up in the mountains, out in the desert. The desert during the winter, the mountains during the summer, obviously. And so we love to do that.
Fun. You certainly see some of the ways that your neighborhood or that neighborhood has changed over the years, even ASU campus. Do you have some thoughts on the changes from when you grew up and until now?
There are certainly tremendous changes that have come. When we moved back here in '53, there were about 7,500 people in Tempe, and I think that included the student body of ASU. So it was a small town. There was no growth. There were no subdivisions south of Broadway. Broadway was the edge of town. The only thing out there beyond Broadway was some farmhouses and the ASU dairy.
That's big changes
Yep.
from now. What were some things about your neighborhood? Do you have any interesting stories or traditions or things you remember growing up in your neighborhood, and like share about the schools that you attended? You talked about Paine.
Right. We had a great neighborhood to grow up in. We had a great big eucalyptus tree in the front yard that I could climb and see into Mesa from that tree. Then we had a couple mulberry trees, and my cousin and I devised a a string message system between the front yard and the backyard through these trees, so we could send secret messages.
So fun.
But we also lived about 200 feet from the railroad tracks, which is, just north of Daly Park. And I had been known to take a penny once in a while and put on the tracks. I wouldn't put a dime there because that was a little pricey for me, but I have put several pennies there, and I probably don't recommend that you try that nowadays, but it sure made some interesting shapes out of those pennies.
Oh, that's so interesting. I don't even know how often the trains run through, but back then, was it daily? Was it several times a day?
Several times a day. In fact, when I would have a friend over to spend the night, he would jump up in bed in the middle of the night and say, "What's that?" "Oh, just a train." To him, it sounded like World War III, but we were so used to it, we'd sleep right through it.
So fun.
Can I tell you a story about Daly Park?
Please, yeah.
Daly Park is where a lot of the students at a high school, they went there to resolve their differences one with another, if you know what I mean. And from our backyard, we could actually see Daly Park. And my mom one time saw a commotion over at Daly Park, and she went over to investigate. Well, a friend of mine was having a fight with this bigger boy, very much bigger than him. But my friend was a wrestler. So my mom says, or she went over there to stop the fight, because that's not right, especially a smaller boy against a bigger boy. Well, a good friend of mine, Mike Furbottom, put his arm around my mom and he said, "Now, Mrs. Richardson, we're going to make sure that Randy's okay. Randy's a good guy, and we'll make sure this fight doesn't get out of hand, and just know that we'll take care of it." And to her dying day, my mom says, "I love Mike Furbottom because he treated me like she wanted to be treated. She didn't want to just be pushed away, but he put his arm around her and told her that he was going to make sure that nothing happened to my friend Randy." And just as a parenthetical note, Randy beat the tar out of the other kid.
Did you attend Tempe High then?
I did. Once a Buffalo, always a Buffalo. Tomorrow night, in fact, we're having our 55th school year reunion.
Oh, that's
Although
great.
it's happening 56 years after we graduated, because last year we couldn't have it.
Yeah.
So I'll see a lot of my classmates and teachers tomorrow night.
Oh, fun. Do you have any favorite memories or stories from your years at Tempe High?
Well, I was very involved at Tempe High, maybe to the point of being too involved, because I probably could have gotten better grades if I weren't so involved in wrestling. I wrestled varsity 4 years. I was the smallest kid at Tempe High.
Wow.
When I was a freshman. When there were a new group of freshmen came in, I was still the smallest kid, boy or girl, at Tempe High. But I was able to wrestle 95 pounds, other 95-pounders like me. So that was a sport for me. I was way too little for any other sports. But wrestling was great, and it's great to hear all the schools saying, "Get him, Gary, turn him over, pin him."
Yeah.
They're cheering for me, not just the team, but it's for me personally. So that was very satisfying. So I did wrestling. I was in concert choir. I was in the science club. I ran for student government, and I was the sophomore vice president and the senior class president. And boys state, and I was also elected to be a chaplain. We had prayers back then before our assemblies.
Oh, okay.
And so there were 3 of us chaplains, and I was one of the 3 selected for that.
Interesting. And once you graduated from high school, I'm going to assume you went right to ASU, but why don't you tell us?
You bet. And ASU was a bargain for me because my dad was on the faculty. They gave us tuition discounts. In fact, I got a scholarship from the Republican Gazette for having a paper route with only a few kicks, if you will. They call them kicks if you get a complaint called in.
Oh.
I didn't get a paper today, and Gary's my paper boy. So I actually made money going to ASU. I wanted to be a nuclear scientist, and the atomic bombs really interested me. I wanted to know how they worked. But when I got to ASU, I majored in physics for 1 year, and it got too hard. They started talking about gravitational pull between two stars and two planets, and I thought, I'm sorry, but I guess that's not for me. So I went on a 2-year mission for our church to Argentina, and when I came back, I decided that political science would be a good fit for me because I was always interested in politics.
Interesting.
And so that's what I graduated in.
And what did you do after you graduated from ASU?
Well, you'd think I would either run for office or teach or go to law school, but I ended up selling insurance. A friend of mine who also went to Tempe High, Alan Tate, suggested that I go to work for Farmers Insurance. There's a beautiful thing called renewals where you get paid even if you don't go search somebody out and sell them insurance. You get paid as long as they keep paying their premium. So that really appealed to me. So that's what I did for most of my life.
Mm-hmm. So lots of people are insured or had insurance because of you. Yeah.
Yeah.
In Tempe and around town. Do you feel like the political events of high school and college and right after that impacted you at all? I know you eventually ran for office, so what prompted you or inspired you to do that?
Well, I've always wanted to make a difference. And so on my tombstone, I hope they say something about that. He wanted to make a difference, or maybe he did make a difference. And I figured that the best way to do that would be to get into public office and help shape public policy. So I ran for the legislature, the House of Representatives, in 1988 and lost. But that just whetted my appetite. So in 1990, I ran again and I won. And so that started 8 years in the legislature for me, 4 years in the House of Representatives, representing Tempe and Ahwatukee and Guadalupe, and then 4 years in the state Senate.
And do you recall some things that you worked on while you were in the legislature? Some reflections you have of your time there?
Education has always been very important to me, to our family. In fact, 1 year, Bev Herman and I, who were the 2 representatives in the House, we decided that the legislature, the Republicans, weren't giving enough money to K-12 education. So we went to the speaker and we said, you know what? We're not going to vote for this budget unless you put $50 million more into education, K-12. And guess what? They did it.
Wow.
So it reminded me, or it cemented in my mind, that if you put your heart and soul into it, you can make a difference. And that felt really good to me. And another accomplishment, if you will, that I feel like I had was a lady from Tempe. Her name was, I think, Sarah Thompson. She came to me and said she got a ticket for not having her 5-year-old who weighed less than 50 pounds in a car seat. And I looked at the law, and the law was very vague about that. So I wrote and sponsored the bill and got it passed to just say under 50 pounds must be in a car seat. It doesn't matter if you're 5 or 10. If you're under 50 pounds, that's the only thing you have to worry about, which cleared it up for this lady and her family. And I think it cleared it up for a lot of other people. So that's an example of somebody coming to me personally, and I was able to help them out. And that felt really good to me. I still remember that to this day.
That's excellent. When you have your constituents come to you and
Right.
say, here's an issue or a problem, how can you help address it at the state level or policy level? I wanted to back up a little bit because I heard that you were an ASU mascot at one time. Can you share with us a little bit about that?
In 1959, I was in 6th grade at Payne Training, and some people from ASU came over and wanted to select a junior. They didn't call us Sparky back then. The name didn't come for years later, but they wanted a young Sparky and a college-age Sparky. So I keep saying that they picked the most mischievous kid in 6th grade, which was me, obviously, and asked me to be Sparky. So I was that for 3 years.
And did you have a uniform or a
I
costume
did.
or something?
My uniform, my costume is in the Tempe Historical Museum.
Oh.
It's been on display for many years, but I don't know if it, gets rotated around.
Mm-hmm.
But the last year, the last game that I was the mascot, we were down at U of A, and we were losing, and we should have been winning. You know how that goes. Right at the very end of the game, some young guy about my age yanked the tail right out of my costume and ran as hard as he could. I would have chased him to Nogales if I could have caught him. But that costume in the museum is still missing that tail.
Oh, that's a funny story. Oh my gosh.
One other strong memory I have of being the mascot is that we played Hardin-Simmons University one year. I think they're a Texas university, maybe West Texas. And so I did my job, and I went around to the other side of the field and stole one of their girls' pom-poms. And I was running back across the end zone to come back with it, my trophy. And a bunch of their college guys jumped out of the stands and grabbed me before I could get away. And I heard them say, "Let's pants him." That means take his pants off. And I thought, I can still feel the chill in my body as I thought, they're not even going to leave me any modesty out in front of 30,000 people at Sun Devil Stadium. Just then, about 20 guys came out of our stands and met them halfway in the end zone. So these guys dropped me and went back to their place. And
Same.
to this day, I think I couldn't have ever shown my face in Tempe if they'd have carried through with their plan.
Oh, who knew the trials and tribulations of the mascots?
And I'm just trying to have fun.
Did you have any jobs in high school or college?
Well, my money earning started very early. When I was 8 or 9, I started selling boxes of 21 all-occasion greeting cards, birthdays, things like that, for $1.25, and I would get 50 cents a piece. And if I sold so many more boxes, then I could get a mitt for baseball or something that would keep me incentivized to keep selling. And so at 8 or 9, I would go around the neighborhood where I lived and say, I'd have a little spiel memorized. And so I'd give them that spiel and they'd say, "Oh, I think I'll buy from you," even if I didn't need it.
Mm-hmm.
They appreciated somebody that would memorize something at that age.
Such a young age,
and
yeah.
give their best for it. So I started out doing that. Then I did have a paper route, Arizona Republic, all through high school. I was in a guitar band playing bass guitar for a couple of years, my senior year and my first year in college, and we made some money there. I also worked for a tire store in Woolco shopping center that was just north of the river. And I did end up selling mini cars that run with the Briggs & Stratton engine with my brother-in-law. And that was so much fun. We would send those mini cars all over the country.
Wow.
And then, like I say, Alan Tate talked me into starting with Farmers Insurance, and that was the start of my insurance career.
Really fun range of experiences, though, leading up to that.
I also sold motorcycles during my college years. Apache Honda out on Main Street just into Mesa.
Mm-hmm.
So I sold motorcycles for 5 years.
Did you ride motorcycles too?
Yep,
I mean,
I
if you're
started
selling
riding them. You bet.
neighborhoods, other neighborhoods did you live in Tempe? So you talked about where you grew up. Um,
My wife and I bought our first starter home in South Mesa, and within about 18 months we bought a home at Rural and the freeway right over here. The interesting thing is the freeway ended at Rural. So they were working on the freeway to, move it farther east, but in 1973, when we bought that first home, we, the freeway ended right there. So there's so much growth that's happened just since we've been married.
yeah. Do you have some thoughts on the growth and maybe the challenges that Tempe has had because of the growth, or the positives that Tempe has experienced because of the growth?
Well, Tempe has certainly grown up. It's gone from 7,500 people when we moved here to, I think, 180, is it? And we're landlocked now. We can't go anywhere else except up, which we have done. When I was in the state senate, I got the bill passed that meant that the Rio Salado lake, town lake, could be built.
Oh.
And they'd been trying for a couple of years to get that, and since that was part of my district, I thought, well, I'll go to work on that. And so I lobbied everybody that I could to please vote for this, and we got it passed. In fact, the lobbyists for the city of Tempe told me that if I could get that bill passed by April, they would have not the grand opening, but the groundbreaking for the first hotel in August, which didn't happen for several years, but it wasn't their fault. But I still remember, if I do this by April, maybe we can get started by August.
Oh,
But now the result is all that growth around the lake.
Yeah, so significant.
Some people like it, and for some people it's, we'd like to go back to smaller buildings.
Well, it's definitely a lot of growth. And this weekend, Tempe will be celebrating their 150th sesquicentennial.
Yeah.
And so there will be a lot of celebrating around that Tempe Town Lake area. And I know a lot of people appreciate that whole area. There's just so much to enjoy around that. So I didn't realize you had a part in that. So thank you. What role has faith played in your life?
Well, I've always been an active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I served a mission for our church in Argentina for 2 years, learned Spanish, and I'm trying to keep it up, but it's been a long time. I've also been the bishop of a congregation of young single adults. They get together for church meetings weekly and activities, and so I with a couple of other brothers about my age, the bishop and 2 counselors, we led this ward for 3 years, and we had 62 couples get married.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's what we said. Thank goodness. That's what it's all about.
I was just telling somebody I need to send my son over there. That's trying to get him married off.
There you go.
Are there any community or recreational activities in Tempe that you have taken part in?
As a kid, there were a lot. I even played on Ladmo's baseball league. I don't know if you know
Wallace and
Ladmo.
Yeah.
Lad Kwiatkowski. He organized the baseball league. I think he was a semi-pro baseball player earlier before he became Ladmo. And it was a great opportunity for several hundred of us young kids to play baseball and try to hit that ball over the fence.
Now, was he famous as Ladmo at that time? So it was kind of fun that you were around a celebrity?
He was. He was Ladmo, and he was Lad Kwiatkowski, the organizer and the instigator of that baseball league.
How fun. Do you have some thoughts on businesses, either when you were growing up or in college or even now, that you feel that that you have stories about or recollections about or that have contributed to Tempe, or maybe that are gone now that you really enjoyed?
One of my most fulfilling volunteer positions was with the Tempe Chamber of Commerce. They were started in the late 1800s as the Tempe Board of Trade, and it, expanded and grew up to be the Tempe Chamber of Commerce. And so I had my own insurance agency and I wanted to promote it, so I found out the Tempe Chamber of Commerce is a way to do that. So I signed up for the Chamber of Commerce, and one of my dad's good friends was Bud Roberts of Roberts Tire Sales out on Apache. And another person in the chamber that helped me a lot was Violet Parento. Don Casano and Bobby were on Don, in fact, both of them have been on the board of the Tempe Chamber, but they helped me get involved. And I actually was able to become the president of the Tempe Chamber of Commerce.
Oh.
The main thing that I did as the Tempe Chamber president was the previous president and several presidents before would come to city council meetings and pound on the podium and say, "Don't do this," or "Do this instead." And they'd always get voted down. And so I thought, let's try a different approach. So I went to Mayor Mitchell and I said, "Mr. Mayor, we're never gonna stand at the podium and pound on our fists on it and tell you not to do something or to do something else." And he looked at me like, "Really? I gotta see this." And I said, "But we want something in return. We want to be included before you make your decisions. Just included. You don't have to do what we say.
Be at the
But
table.
we would like our input at the city council level before you've got the votes to ram something through." And he said, "Okay." And so that started a new era in cooperation between the businesses in Tempe and the government in Tempe. And long after I had done my time on the Tempe Chamber board, the complaint came that maybe now the chamber was too close to the city council and we need to stand, we need to be more apart instead of this idea. But I always thought that cooperation and talking it out before a decision is in stone is always better than pounding on the podium.
Yeah.
So I think it's been a great thing for all of Tempe.
Yeah. Have your travels outside of Tempe or even Arizona influenced the way that you think about Tempe?
As my wife and I and our family have traveled around the country or maybe around the world, we've noticed that a lot of these places we've gone to have a rich history. Some of them going back 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years. Well, I've realized that Tempe, while it doesn't go back 2,000 or 3,000 years, it has its own rich history too. And starting with Hayden's Ferry and Carl Hayden and Charles Hayden, his father. And we have a history that rivals anything anybody else has. So we are as unique as anybody else in the world. And of course, we have grown up around the history, but the beauty is still there.
Yeah. In what ways do you feel still connected to Tempe?
Well, we still have lots of friends in Tempe. We have since moved up to the mountains in Forest Lakes up in the White Mountains.
Mm-hmm.
We went up there looking for a cabin and we ended up buying a home.
Nice.
And so we sold our home down here in the valley because we love the different seasons up there. It's not just hot and hotter.
Mm-hmm.
It actually snows. But we bought a snowblower, so we're okay. And we can still visit the valley in the winter or whenever we want, which our kids are a big draw for us to come back to the valley anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we made the switch, and 4 years later, we're still happy with it.
Are there things, and you may have alluded to this already, but things that you're particularly proud of in your accomplishments in Tempe and the city in general, things that you might be proud of in the city of Tempe.
I've actually done a lot of thinking about that because I'm getting up in years, you know. What can I say about my life? You know, is what's good, what's maybe not so good, what would I have changed? And I really think that my greatest accomplishment, and this may sound schmaltzy, is my family.
Oh, that's great.
I think if you're gonna change the world, you know who you start with? Your own self and your spouse and your kids, and then by extension, your grandkids and on, that great big pyramid effect.
Yeah.
So I think the best way we can change the world is, like I say, to start with ourselves and our family. And then if everybody will do that to at least a certain extent, then our city, our state, and our country and world will be better as a result.
That's a great
I know
thought.
it sounds schmaltzy, but
No,
it's
that's
true.
yeah, I like it. Is there anything else related to your work, your life, your family, colleagues, friends, neighbors, anything that I didn't ask you about that you might want to share?
I think Tempe has just given me personally, speaking for myself, the opportunity to be and do whatever I want. You know, we have a lot of freedoms in this country, but a lot happens on the local level that can either help or hinder that. And I think Tempe was a wonderful place to grow up and to raise our kids, because we raised all of our kids here. Even though they went to McClintock High and they have their Stuff the Buffs t-shirts. But, you know, I'm a Buffalo, so once a Buffalo, always a Buffalo.
Oh, you still love them, even though they're not
That's
buffaloes.
right. At least they're loyal.
There you go. Well, thank you so much. We usually open it up if anybody else has any questions.
So this is Dwayne Roan. You have been so involved in the community in many ways, and we frequently get people who ask us, how can I get involved in my community? So what advice would you give to people who want to get more involved?
Well, I got involved with the Tempe Chamber of Commerce, and I'm a Republican, so I got involved with the Republican County, or the Republican Party, and became an elected official in the party for Maricopa County. And really, I guess what really turned the corner for me was maybe working on Don Casano's city council campaign. I did a little bit. You know, Don and Bobby did a lot. I did a little bit, and we helped him win by 31 votes out of thousands. So you think, oh, it could have gone the other way. But find someone to support politically, if you will, or spiritually, help other people, and it will always come back to you. It will always be good for you. And again, that sounds like, you know, everybody can say that, but I think the more you give, the more is going to come back to you.
And a follow-up question, how do you find those opportunities that you mentioned?
Well, I was told by some friends that Don and Bobby were great people to work with. And so I trusted them. And so I started working with Don and Bobby, and the more I got to know them, the more I realized that was true. So it doesn't have to be political. It can be spiritual. It can be business directed. But go out of your way to do something for somebody. Even if there's nothing that you think you can get back for it, in the end, you know, you will receive something back for it. Maybe not in this life, but sometime.
Thank you.
So this is Mike Osler. I have a question. I remember going as an adult to a dance, and there was this, I think, ad hoc band of some older gentlemen. There was a Brent Jameson and and Gary Richardson.
Yep.
Drums and guitar. How did you get started in that? Tell us a little bit about that.
That's another great story. I've had so much fun.
I have to add, you were playing, I remember the song Gloria that you were playing. It was
Yep.
kind of some wild stuff.
Rolling
at that
Stones.
time.
In my high school band, it was Bill Wooten, me, Alan Young, who later became president of the Fiesta Bowl committee,
Oh.
and Dennis Melcher, a friend from Mesa. And so we were playing the Beatles and Beach Boys songs and, 60s songs, because it was in 64, 65. Well, now, many years later, Don Burchett, who I hope you get to interview, came to me and said, "Hey, do you want to put together an old man's band?" And I said, "Do I? Can I play bass again?" And he said, "Sure, we need a bass player." So I got some equipment and we started practicing, and we had so much fun doing that. But we were playing the same songs that we did play 40 years ago because they were still great songs. And so we called ourselves the Grateful Dads,
That's great.
if you can believe that name. A little hokey, but hey, it's okay. So we had so much fun doing that. We would mainly play for church dances, school dances. We did play for Chapman Chevrolet one time, their Christmas party out on their outside there. So we just had more fun than we probably should have. But it was, you love music, you got to do it, you got to play it.
That's a great story.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem.
It's been delightful to hear your stories and an honor to meet you. Thank you
Oh.
so much.
No, it's good to be asked.
Yeah.
But Don Burchett is a guy, he's probably as knowledgeable about Tempe's history and his role in the history as anybody here. His grandfather was the first ever student body president of Tempe Normal School.
Wow.
Back in the maybe it's his great, I don't know exactly.
Mm-hmm.
He can give you lots of good information about Tempe history and his family in particular.
Well, if no one here knows how to get in touch with him, maybe you can put us in touch with him, because
Yeah.
that's what we try to contact people that would make for great oral histories, but sometimes we just don't know how to contact them. So
He's another pain training alum.
yeah,
We've talked to several of them, and some people had the impression that it was an experimental school and they had a lot
It
of
was.
opportunities to experience a lot of different things, but some of them had a little bit of trouble going to school post 12th grade. They felt like they didn't have as robust a study skills as maybe they needed for that.
Well, between you and me, when we got to high school, we felt like there was 28 kids at pain training in each grade, give or take. There were like several hundred at McCamey and other schools. You know who were the school leaders at Tempe High? Pain training.
pain. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
To a large extent. And so while I try not to say that braggingly, it's a fact.
It says something about the leadership skills that they gained. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So we felt like we were very fortunate to be at pain training. In 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, before the school year ended in May, you got to go to Camp Tonazona and stay for a week. Do archery, fishing, even shooting 22s at a target, and football, and it was party time. Everybody in the 3 grades went.
Wow.
So they pioneered a lot of different things, and I think it worked. We loved it.
And how fun you're going to have your 55th high school reunion.
Tomorrow
Well,
night.
yeah, it's been, like you said, 56 years, but 55, you'll get to celebrate with a lot of the people you went to school with.
In fact, we're setting up some cameras and Zoom type things that people that aren't able to come
That's
can
wonderful.
maybe say, look at that guy, he has white hair now. Or he used to have hair. But
Yeah.
it'll be a lot of fun. It's at Shalimar
Oh, right close.
tomorrow night.
That's great that you're doing that with the cameras. My mom
Yeah.
just had her 60th, but she couldn't go, and and she had somebody walk around with the FaceTime phone, you know, to
Yeah,
be able to
that's-
say, you know, hi Arlene, and they had a very
Yeah.
small class. I think there were 50, you know, so there's only like 25 or 30 there,
Huh.
you know, but it's wonderful you're doing that because it helps the people that can't attend feel connected and get to see some
Yeah.
people still.
Yeah, I
That's
think it's
great.
a great idea.
Yeah, it is. Oh, fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
bet.
Gary.